Elon Musk. You know the name, you've seen the headlines for sure. But what if the real key to understanding him wasn't in all that noise, but in a simple three-part framework? Well, using Walter Isaacson's biography as our guide, we're going to try to uncover the core forces that drive one of the most talked about figures of our time. So let's dive in.
So, what is he? A genius saving humanity? A reckless billionaire? A visionary engineer? Honestly, public perception is a total whirlwind. To make sense of the man behind the myth, Isaacson says we actually have to go all the way back to the beginning.
You know, this quote is raw, and it's raw for a reason. It comes from a childhood that Isaacson describes as just brutal. It was a time that built this deep-seated tolerance for risk and a really high threshold for pain. It's kind of the first clue that to really get the man, you have to understand the psychological blueprint that was laid down when he was just a kid.
Okay, so let's start with the first and most fundamental layer, the neurological framework that shapes his personality. You can really think of it as his core operating system.
Yep, Musk announced this himself on live television. And as Isaacson explains it, Asperger's means the brain is literally wired differently. This can make it incredibly difficult to just, natively process the social and emotional cues that most of us just take for granted.
So all these behaviors that are often seen as flaws, like seeming distant or having these sudden mood swings or totally failing to read the room, they get recontextualized. Isaacson suggests they aren't necessarily character defects, but are direct results of this underlying neurological reality. It's just a different way of processing the world around him.
Wow. This quote from Grimes, who's the mother of 3 of his children, it really just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It highlights this common double standard, and it kind of pushes us to consider a different, maybe more empathetic lens when we're trying to understand his actions.
Okay, so that's his neurological operating system. Now, let's look at the software he runs on top of it. This is the second layer, the logical, almost systematic algorithm he uses to make what seems impossible, possible.
Get this. Back in 2014, when Tesla sold just over 30,000 cars, Musk set a goal to produce 500,000 cars a year by 2020. The press called it absurd. I mean, people thought he was nuts. But as you can see from this number, he almost did it. And that's not magic. It's a result of a very, very specific method.
So the core philosophy behind that method is what's called first principles thinking. It basically means you ignore how things have always been done. Isaacson suggests this whole perspective, this ability to see past convention right to the fundamental truths, is deeply connected to his neurological wiring. You break a problem down to its most basic, undeniable facts, like the laws of physics, and then you build your solution up from there.
And Isaacson actually boils that entire philosophy down into a 5-step algorithm. 1. Question every single requirement. 2. Delete any part or process you possibly can. 3. Simplify and optimize whatever's left. 4. Accelerate the cycle time. And 5, and this is the crucial part, only as the final step, automate. The sequence here is absolutely critical, as Musk says all the time. The biggest mistake is automating something that shouldn't even exist in the first place.
All right, we've seen the operating system and the algorithm. But what's the ultimate goal here? What is all of this relentless drive actually for? Now we're going to peel back that final layer and explore his deep-seated why.
Man, this quote tells you so much. For him, engineering, business, it's not just about fixing things that are broken. There has to be a higher purpose, something more inspiring that's pulling you forward.
It's a really powerful question. If the purpose of technology isn't just to solve one miserable problem after another, then what is its purpose? What should we all be striving for? Let's just take a beat and think about that before we see Musk's answer.
For Musk, the answer is pretty clear. It's creating a future that makes you excited to be alive. And for him, the single most inspiring vision for that future is humanity becoming a multiplanetary species. This, right here, is the core mission behind SpaceX. It's not just about building rockets, it's about ensuring a future that actually feels exciting. Okay, so now we have the 3 distinct layers. Let's try and put them all together to see the full picture that Isaacson is trying to paint for us.
So you've got the 3 layers. The operating system, that's his neurology, and it helps explain his behavior. Then you have the algorithm, that's his method, and that helps explain his incredible success. And finally, the mission, his inspiration, explains his why. According to Isaacson, when you see all these pieces working together, a much more coherent, if still really complex, picture starts to emerge.
Which leaves us with one final question to think about.
Now that we have a clearer framework for the person, his brain, his method, his motivation, does that change how we should view his missions? Does understanding the man change how we end up valuing his work?